All right. In the words of my favorite streamer, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. And welcome to another episode of Mentorship Monday. My name is Ben Sadegapur. Most people here online know me as Nahamsek. I'm the head of Hacker Education at HackerOne. I also have Nick here with me. I'll let him introduce himself real quick.
Yep, I'm Nick Zachu. I'm a community manager at HackerOne. Excited to be with you all today.
And we are hosting another Mentorship Monday. So if you're not familiar with Mentorship Monday, the goal is to bring on industry experts, people in the space that we think are valuable for our community to connect with. Nick, who is our guest today?
Yeah, our guest today is John Matherly, the founder of Shodan, which many of you are probably familiar with. It's a search engine for devices connected to the internet. This means you can find webcams, routers, servers, and all sorts of interesting things from across the globe. So it's been featured in shows like Mr. Robot and has grown to 3 million users since its inception. So we're really thrilled to have John with us today and have him speak about this exciting tool.
And I think a lot of people who have probably seen any of my content or stream have realized that I religiously use Shodan for a lot of the bug bounty stuff. And I'm curious to hear from the chat, everybody in the chat right now, if you use Shodan, and if you do use it, how do you use Shodan today? I think one of the best parts of being able to use Shodan is just being able to query anything on the internet. I know there is like the bug bounty space is just like 1% of it. There's other crazy stuff you can find on there. But just being able to query for things that are valuable to bug bounty hunters because it's been indexed on Shodan has been a huge game changer. I'm a big fan of John. I'm a big fan of Shodan. I think I'm just fanboying hard right now. But I want to hear from the chat. Let's hype the chat up a little bit, and then I will bring on our guest. Before we jump into that, we have some exciting news about our CTFs.
Yes. This past week, we had a CTF launch on HackerOne. It was Veterans Day themed. And throughout the 48-hour competition, we had some exciting challenges be solved by our hackers on the stream. And so we want to announce the prizes for the top 3 finishers. And we can announce those right now. Ben, do you think that's a good time?
Yeah, let me quickly share my screen. Actually, I think sharing our screen would be a better option. I'm going to pull it up really quick right now. Sorry, I'm using like 2 computers and it's very confusing. So if you see me struggling, I apologize. Also from the chat, if anybody wants to chime in and let us know if you have actually played this, if you participated in the CTF, I'd love to hear it. All right, let's see if I did this right. All right, so here's the leaderboard for the event we just did. So this event started on Thursday and it ended on Saturday. It was an open CTF and we have 3 winners. But before we announce the winners, I mean, it's kind of obvious who's won. What was the prizes, Nick?
Yeah, the prizes were first place will receive $500, second place $300, and third place $200. So we'll be getting in contact with those of you who are in the top 3 places, but that's the prizes we have.
So if you're unknown, I've been trying to practice this name. I can't say it. If you were in second place in HackerOne's CTF today, congrats to you. And Weirdo, I'm very familiar with who you are. Congrats, amazing work. Great work to the 3 of you. But also some of our runner-up, me9187 for 4th place, Sumanth number 5, JPEG Mafia, Nook Niaro, Tamis DXW. One of our mods is on here. I'll match this actually. One of the Hacker 101 mods. Congrats to you for 10th place and 8J5QRU. I can't say the rest of that for 9th place. All right, so it looks like someone in the chat says it's Senpai Kirito. Yep, I think. All right, make it easier next time for me so I can actually read it. All right, should we welcome our guest to the stream? Nick, you ready?
Yep, I think it's great to bring on
John.
John.
Chat. Let's bring on John to the stream and get to hear about Shodan. How you doing, man?
Good morning.
Good
Thank
morning.
you
Thank
for
you.
inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm a big fan. When Nick said, "Hey, when we do streams for Monday, what if we bring John from Shodan?" I was like, "Wait, can we actually do that?" Because I use Shodan very, very regularly, and being able to talk to you directly is going to be very, very cool. So I'm very happy you're here. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Of course.
Yeah. Before we jump into it, can we do a quick introduction of who you are, kind of your background,
Sure.
maybe
Okay.
how Shodan started and how it led to Shodan starting?
Yeah, sure. So my name is John Matherly. I'm the founder and still CEO of Shodan. It's 12 years old now, actually. It's been a long time. So
Oh,
I'm get some gray hairs in the meantime. Um, so my background is bioengineering, um, technically bioinformatics. So I went to college for bioinformatics, which is basically applying computer science with biology and chemistry. The idea back then was this was like after the Human Genome Project, there would be this explosion of data in biology and chemistry, and you would need computer scientists who understand the science behind biology and chemistry to properly make sense of that data. The idea was that there'd be demand for that by large organizations, pharmaceuticals and whatnot. It turns out that wasn't the case. But it was still a really fun major because I got to be in classes where my professor literally worked on the Human Genome Project. So that was really awesome, actually. Um, but so my background was a bit in sort of data mining because you have these big data sets and you're trying to make senses. You need to analyze them fairly efficiently. Back then, big data was, hundreds of gigs, and that's a lot. Um, so that was my academic background. But alongside that, Um, so I dropped out of high school in Switzerland. I guess I should say I'm from Switzerland originally. I'm not Swiss. If you're born in Switzerland, it doesn't make you Swiss. I was born and raised. It's different. People in the U.S. don't know that not all countries are like that. So I dropped out of high school. I moved to the U.S. because my aunt lived here, and we used to go to the bookstore a lot. And in the bookstore once, I saw this 2600 magazine, and I was like, "What is this?" Because it's like this odd shape compared to everything else. I picked it up. I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." And in the back, there were meetups 2600 meetups, like a listing of where they are. And so I was like, yeah, let me check it out. And so I went to a 2600 meetup, and the people there were nuts. They were really good. I think the first meetup I attended, they made a Wi-Fi antenna out of a grill, and it went
wow.
war driving. And I was like, this is sick. So this is really cool. And so that's kind of how I entered security, kind of tangentially. And then yeah, and the idea behind Shodan originally was I don't know how many people are familiar with I think it's Netcraft. Do you know Netcraft? They used to
No.
be famous for their monthly web server charts
Yeah.
of like, oh, Apache is growing, IIS is shrinking, like how do you find out? And I was like, oh, they're doing it for web servers. Well, I can do this for everything else. Like, why isn't there a Netcraft for FTP? Why isn't there a Netcraft for all these other services that are out there? And so that was the initial pitch. Let me collect as much data as I can and try to create something like Netcraft, but for everything else, because they had the web server stuff cornered. And I remember pitching it to somebody at Microsoft at Black Hat many years ago, and he just looked at me. He's like, "You can't do that. That doesn't make any sense. You can't
Wow.
crawl the whole internet." I'm like, "I'm doing it." It's like, "No, you're not." It's like, "Motherfucker." All right, fine. So I was a complete nerd back then. I'm still somewhat nerdy now. But I didn't understand the business side of it at all. For me, it was like a purely technical endeavor, and people didn't believe me when I told them I was doing it. So, the business side of it, that aspect never took off. And after that failed, I was like, screw it, let me just release what I have as a search engine. Because from a bioinformatics background, I kind of knew how to turn, massage data and stuff. And so I released it, and I got lucky. HD found it on Twitter. Some other high-ranking security people found it on Twitter. I mean, I had 30 followers at the time. I was not connected in security at all. I got lucky. I posted, I think, world's first computer search engine, which turned out being confusing for people because they thought it was like a desktop search engine sometimes. But so I got lucky. The security people picked it up, and then I've been running with it ever since. So obviously, it's kind of grown into its own thing over the 12 years. So it's a bit different nowadays. And
well, I'm glad Microsoft didn't scare you off to not pursue Shodan.
they're a customer now.
Oh, perfect.
So it's like it's come full circle. We're like, all right.
Well, on the behalf of the bug bounty community, I would like to thank Microsoft for not discouraging you, because it's very helpful. But I'm curious, you said Netcraft was doing like web server information, like what was being used and that sort of stuff. What was the first thing you started indexing with Shodan?
It was actually web servers too.
Really? So
it was so easy. It was web servers and telnet, FTP. I think I looked at the ports that I typically looked at when I was doing security stuff, which was very basic, just the most popular. So I did FTP, HTTP, telnet. I might have done POP3 and IMAP and SMTP as well. It was like a list of maybe like 5 to 10 ports that I looked at initially.
Yeah.
And the web server stuff was also just to validate that my data made sense compared to Netcraft's, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't just, completely out there. But the nature of when you collect data like this, it's not really, it's very difficult to get, wrong data.
Yeah.
It's just, are you comprehensive enough? That was, question. But
so with scanning, I feel like nowadays it's more common, especially when you're crawling the entire internet.
Yep.
How hard was it to learn and explain to people you're doing these for good intent, for research? Because I feel like I've spread the entire IPv4 a few times, and I've had some very nice CISOs reach out to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine, years ago when you were doing this, because
I had to move every other week. Like my hosting providers, it would be like, I deploy my scanners. I always told the guys beforehand, hey, like, this is what I'm doing, but they didn't understand. A lot of these guys who work in support and hosting providers, they're not security people. They're not super technical. And so if I tell them, port scanning the internet, they're like, what? Port scanning, ban.
Ban, yeah.
So, and if they got any abuse email, they'll just ban me instantly. It was not so that's also shaped the Shodan infrastructure a lot from a technical perspective. All of our crawlers are kind of independent. They don't actually send any data to our infrastructure because they were always designed to be disposable. Because at a moment's notice, they might go offline.
Yeah.
At least back then.
That's really cool.
And so, yeah, I had to move servers all the time. Even now, I think, for us, it's different because we have a positive reputation. And so we have a much better time handling that nowadays. We actually have the reverse situation a lot, where organizations, they block everybody else except us because we're sort of a known quantity and they use us. And we have a lot of partners, like, Microsoft, big companies use us and they want to see, and the risk scoring companies use us. And so if you're blocking us, then you might have a really bad score by our partners, right? And it's become a very different sort of beast. But yeah, back then people didn't understand. Even now, I think people overestimate the knowledge that the average IT person has, even developer person, because they're not security people.
Yeah, the security thing is like the hacking concept is very new, right? Like right now, if you say you're a hacker, it's a lot different than what you said 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, that word has become not as toxic as it used to be. So that's good, especially with there've been so many high-profile compromises that, and then very often the people that they bring on the TV shows afterwards are hackers.
Yeah.
Like Dave Kennedy, he's like all over the place, right? I mean, people like that are changing the perception of what it is to be somebody who works in computer security, and so.
Yeah, so it's awesome to hear you were able to, find a way to keep Shodan alive. Just, I'm always curious how these people early on were able to.
I was very stubborn. Also, I remember somebody said, "Oh, Shodan won't survive more than 3 days," and I was like, "I'll show you." Son of a bitch. So yeah.
So before you kind of became this known entity, who were some of your early supporters, mentors that helped you, realize how you could turn this into a business, how you could keep this going, And like in contrast to the people that said like this will never work, like who were some of the people that said yes, like go for this?
I mean, probably not many. HD, Feno Elite, like yeah, HD more. Like these are people that kind of got it early on and saw the potential of at least the data itself. But almost everybody I spoke to in security was on the reporting bandwagon, where it's like, oh, you should write reports. Yeah, you should generate reports. And I was like, I don't really want to write reports. That's not super sexy for me.
That
I hate
hasn't
writing.
changed much either.
Yeah,
10
exactly.
years
But
later, you're
it's still
there.
a major deliverable for security people. But that's not. I suck at writing reports. I drag my feet at that stuff, and so like making a living off of that was not really that would not be a great outcome for me. But there were some other people that like early adopters, like some people at I guess I can say some of them. Like Patrick, he wrote a tool called Elephant. He worked at Qualys at the time. He was very supportive.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of people. Actually, Shema Alonso, he's become kind of huge. He wrote FOCA. He's now I think CTO or something of Telefonica. He was very supportive. He really, and he understood the business side a lot better than I did back then, because he was running his own IT company that started branching out into security products. And he was actually the one that we developed the API for initially. And yeah, so it was good having some people early on in security that were already established and kind of were willing to give it a shot and try it out. So
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of high-profile security folks. I think, to give credit, also you are one of those people yourself. You have a sizable Twitter presence. I'm curious to hear a little bit about your Twitter handle. Is there a story behind it? Is there a meaning behind it?
I was studying for the SAT, and I was looking for a new nick, and I was like, "Oh, Achillean, that sounds like a fancy word. I'll take that." And it wasn't taken on I think a lot of the platforms I was using back then. So I was like, all right. I think my nick before then was like Moon Man or something stupid. So I was like, all right, I need to upgrade that.
How has Twitter helped with Shodan?
It's interesting because social media in general is one of those. So from a business perspective, I am not convinced that that it drives sales that much.
Yeah.
So obviously for me, it was hugely important for the initial traction. Without Twitter, I wouldn't have gone anywhere with, because that's where I got a lot of the attention. But I think there is the misconception, as we've at least grown, that tweets and likes and all these other metrics translate into actual business growth, and that's not the case.
No.
At least from our perspective, we have tweets where it's like tens of thousands of retweets or something, and we look at our sales figures or things to back it up, and it's like it didn't make a difference. I think there's a big difference between seeing the tweet and then engaging with the content itself. And so yeah, I mean, obviously we use it. It's a big factor. We have good following. It's easy to interact with the community. We see it more as support, like a support channel.
Yeah, the reason why I ask is Shodan safaris are huge on Twitter. When people show the craziest stuff that I've seen on Shodan, the most random things that shouldn't be online, and it's amazing that these are the things that like cyber criminals are looking for, right? Whether they do it on their own, however tools they use, it shows that there is a vulnerability online of like these cameras that are left online, these remote desktops that are indexed online. There are some crazy stuff that you see people post on Twitter that I've come across while they were browsing Shodan.
Yep.
Has there been any
safaris?
I was gonna ask, have you yourself anything you can share, something crazy in the early days of Shodan that you found or discovered that you were like, holy shit, this thing is publicly available on the internet, and I wonder how many people have seen it?
I mean, the crematorium was also one that I saw. There was a particle accelerator in Berkeley that I thought was kind of cool. I was like, all right, I'm sure this should be online. Honestly, a lot of the stuff I wasn't aware of. Like a lot of controls, like there's a nuclear power plant at some point that was on Shodan. That's probably got to take the cake for things that shouldn't be on the internet. That was obviously a long time ago, but that was sort of a what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not good. But a lot of these things, I'm not an expert in control systems. I'm not an expert in a lot of these other areas that if you don't know what a control system looks like and how it behaves, I mean, it's gotten easier to find that nowadays because of Shodan, but back then it wasn't. I didn't really know what nuclear power plants looked like.
Right, so, being on Shodan, yeah.
I mean, so a lot of the really cool stuff was found by people that are smarter in those areas than me, and so I just provide the data. Like I'm still surprised what people find nowadays. Because
between
how did you find this?
and
like, they're definitely better at using Shodan than I am, because there is sort of a you need to understand the actual devices a lot more, things like that. But
did you ever think that kind of stuff would come out of Shodan when you launched Shodan originally?
No, never. That's the thing that people often assume, like, oh, you're such a visionary. You saw the IoT before it was IoT. And I'm like, nope. I did not see that. I did not see that. I'm just like my mission was just collecting data, and I thought this is kind of what I'm going to do. And then when I think it was Aaron Leverett did a research paper on ICS, and I was like, what, 10,000 ICS? What the fuck? Okay, and then we started digging more, and then I had no idea. I was not I didn't have foresight into that area. I wish I did. So I wish I did. But that was not.
Going off of that topic, and obviously this can be a little bit of a sensitive question. So as much as you're willing to share, how much have you and Shodan had to interact with the various government entities that might say, hey, we don't like that our assets are discoverable, and how do you approach that? Or
I can talk about that because this is something that people always assumed was like, it's very difficult to talk to some of these three-letter agencies. Like it's really, I don't have a background in security. I don't have connections in the government. That was not, I don't have that. And so when Shodan first had all these discoveries, people assumed that these three-letter agencies would notify and talk to me, and that never happened. And so I had to try to reach out through other organizations like FIRST, which is like this organization for certs, like I don't know what you call it, alliance of certs. I don't know, there's some word. So I had to reach out through some other security people to be like, hey, can you forward this to somebody who knows how to talk to these asset owners? Because back then when you tried to contact people directly, they would just it was not a good strategy. And so I had the reverse problem. I tried to reach some of these people because I thought they could help secure some of these things. And conversely, we never got a request from a three-letter agency saying don't scan us. Like we don't have that problem. I'm assuming they have competent people that just block it all together. Because but we never had that. So it's just the opposite problem for us.
No, that's an interesting insight. 'Cause I'm sure it comes across many of the viewers minds. And on a lighter note, maybe you could go over how Shodan 2000 came about, because I saw that, and it's pretty fun that you have a synthwave nod on the platform. I mean, is that like your hacker music of choice?
That was just my side project for DEFCON 9? No, DEFCON 21. I don't know what DEFCON we're on, but it was a fun side project for the DEFCON at that time, and there's not too much to talk about. I guess it's supposed to be fun. I wanted to learn some new shit, do 3D CSS. So one of the nice things about having your own company and doing things your own way, you can do things that are just fun. Like I don't have to have a reason to do it, except I want to.
Don't have
And so
to
it's just-
submit the business use case to, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's no business use case around. There's no like, oh yeah, we're targeting the synthwave demographic, to kind of really nail the I don't know, that market. I don't know. And the music is really cool. And so I was like, yeah, let me do that. And then I also over time added like the image filter, so there's like some glitching on the images, and I was like, yeah. So
When you mentioned about the scanning of the two other agencies, are you saying that you guys have so you guys are just literally scanning everything? There's no, you're not skipping any parts of the internet at all?
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah, people always assumed that we had to block these guys, but we didn't. And we get a lot more
Yeah.
abuse emails from small sys administrators that don't
Yeah.
understand what's going on. Like these large organizations, they see so much traffic all the time. And the way Shodan works is we're not like a regular network scanner that just checks everything at once.
Right.
We purposely spread things out across the week. So these large guys, they're used to dealing with this stuff. They don't really care. They just see it on the radar and like, they have dedicated security staff that do understand how things work. So most of the support, like for abuse, comes from small guys. It's like a single IT who just checks their logs every few weeks, and it's like, what is this? And then you look it up in abuse DB, and you see like, oh my god, so many abuse. This must be a malicious IP. So,
how often are you guys scanning, if you don't mind me asking?
the cadence is once per week.
Wow.
So that's how we spread things out, and we purposely don't go too fast. If you go too fast, you actually get less data. Right. If you go too slow, obviously, there's like a middle ground. We've settled on 1 week. That's kind of what we go for. Yeah. We also do some other more specialized things. Like once a month, we do a host name-based scan of the internet. So you can actually tell Shodan, hey, Shodan, scan google.com. And we're going to look up all the IPs for google.com. And we're going to, when we scan those IPs, we set the proper SNI and host headers.
Yeah.
So if you have a virtual host you want to check, you can do that. And so we have a DNS database of like 600 million host names that we scan once a month. So we do that as well. And we do a bunch of other things. But
So Shodan was featured in shows like Mr. Robot, and that was actually my first introduction to Shodan. Watching that a few years ago and being like, this is cool. Now I got to look this up. And so I was wondering, like, how did those like sorts of depictions of like your product get impact the traffic on the website, or just usage overall? Anything that you noticed?
So Mr. Robot, we did get a bump, and Mr. Robot was very good coverage for us. Also, like I liked it. I watched Mr. Robot show. So when Lost approached Shodan, I was like, holy shit, this is gonna be amazing. And plus, they got like Lost to do the whole thing. Like that's crazy. I can't believe they really did their homework. The guys behind Mr. Robot to nail the sort of hacker culture, as far as I'm concerned. And so Mr. Robot was good coverage. We also got some slight mentions, like visual nods from CSI Cyber and some other things. I was happy they didn't put our logo on that stuff. But generally speaking, we've had news coverage over the years, and there's two types that I've seen. One's more factual, where it's like, hey, this is how it works, this is what you can do, blah, 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 blah. And then we have the sensational, the safaris. The safaris always get way more traffic. Every time, and I hate it. These clickbaity top 10 most, dangerous things on the internet or something like that. And you're like, here we go again. But they get traffic. I remember a Washington Post did an article on us. It was like a 5-page, article about cybersecurity, like Shodan. It was really in depth. It was great. I loved it. Got us almost no traffic. Then CNN did a top 10 list, and it took our website down. I'm like, all right, So this is how it just works. And that's been one of the more frustrating parts for me over the years in cybersecurity. And I think one reason it's easy to get jaded is that negative news sells so much better Like, so much better. It's unreal. It's just orders of magnitude more coverage if you talk about how everything is on fire.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, wow, these guys did a really good job, it's just nobody cares.
You don't want people to think you're pushing that when all these videos or, articles come out. Like, not that you're, putting that out there, but people are writing it themselves about your product.
Also, the first interview I did was with Reuters, right? I thought Reuters is a major, news, whatever syndication company. They write news stories.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, these guys are big. So I got on the phone with this Reuters guy, and the first question, he's like, can you make an elevator crash? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't know enough about elevators and stuff. And it's like, so can you find an elevator, and can you find one with people in it, and could you make it crash? And I was like, no, that's not that, no. And then he hung up, and I was like, okay, so this is how it's gonna be. And
I can picture that headline already. Shodan founder mentions he can take an elevator full of people. Click here to find out more.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, are you? I thought there was all these technical aspects that'd be very interesting to talk about. No. And over the years, I've learned that most major news outlets still want to have the human element. That's why webcams are always a big story, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always like your baby and everything else. It's the human element, even though in terms of exposure and risk, it's fairly minor compared to other things. Minor at a scale of the internet and sort of other issues that are I think are more critical, like nuclear power plants. But yeah, that's just how it goes for news coverage. But
So with the news thing, I'm always going to ask you on the bug bounties end. There's a lot of people that are using your tool that's made the news, that have found bounties, that have paid their bills. Did you ever think it's going to become a part of an ecosystem where people are making money because of your product? Not, but when I say people, I'm not mean organizations that are already making money, right? I mean your community of users that are using Shodan.
I was hoping they would. So that's one of the stances that I tried to take early with Shodan, because the success of Shodan was based on the community to begin with. Right? There are people like that took Shodan and made it what it is today. Like I'm mostly just a developer who collected the data, but almost all the stories, all the research is done by people that are smarter and know more about these things than I do. And so I've always viewed Shodan as a tool/platform that other security people can hopefully use to make a living, or make build their own brand, make their own name, and things like that. That's why if you look at our past, we very rarely release research. It's very rare for us to actually really, release things that directly draw more attention to us. We try to release we try to add new features and tools to help people do research. And then hopefully they can make a living from that and things like that. That was always the goal. And also, whenever we do things, we try to develop things in a way where everybody can use it, not just the big enterprise customers. Because that's one thing in security, is that everybody targets these huge Fortune 10 companies, and they just have these giant multi-million-dollar contracts and things like that. And it's very difficult to access some of these things if you're an individual. But Shodan's been different in that, we released Shodan Trends recently. So a new product for finding how things change over time, and everybody can use it, or well, every member and paying can use it. So we could have made that an enterprise only feature, but we didn't, because it's like, this is just everything we release is available to everybody. And I think it's helped us because smaller guys or individuals, small organizations, they can also use it, and they do really cool stuff with it. So why not?
Is that safe to say that Shodan Trends could be one of your favorite features you have launched in the past few years?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I wanted for a long time. So, because that question always is, so Shodan has been used to find problems right now. Right? You go on Shodan, and you're like, how much is vulnerable right now? But the question was always like, well, is it getting better or worse? And so that lets you answer that. And then we also had some other use cases from companies where they want to see how their network has changed over time. So you're like, oh, we know that they exposed this stupid service on the internet right now, but when was it first exposed? Right, so now you can look at the history of a network and be like, oh, this is how the ports changed over time. And so there's some cool use cases that we weren't able to easily answer before, and now we can. And so I'm pretty excited about it. I mean, I use the features a lot. It's sort of one of those, we eat our own dog food situations where I want this. And so it took a while. It's a lot of data. But
so
big enough now we can do it.
You released the trends, like I want to say last month or so publicly. And for that, how have you seen users interacting with your tool? And just kind of a little like broader question. Have you ever like released, new tools within Shodan that you go, oh, wow, they're using this in a way that I had not, anticipated, or, finding some new utility out of them?
Sure. I mean, most features that are developed in Shodan are based on what our users are currently doing in an unusual way. Okay. Like Shodan Trends is an example where people wrote their own scripts to just once a week query Shodan for how many results are out there, and then they'd have their own local database for handling that. And I'm like, oh, we should just do that for them. We had customers that were, or users that were doing like image analysis on the screenshots we were collecting, so they could filter. Okay. Like, we had some people who wanted to find screenshots that contained one of their bug bounty targets. Yeah. Like Marriott or something. And we're like, oh, I guess we could do OCR ourselves. So a lot of things that have been developed over the years are based on what users have been doing that we didn't realize we could be doing. And sometimes they even share code with us. Like some of the machine learning stuff has been shared with us. And
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's been a very good relationship with the community.
That's awesome. It's amazing to hear how much you guys have done, but what I'm curious to hear a little bit also, with how much you guys have scaled Shodan is you're collecting an incredible amount of data. There's got to be a metric ton of data in there, dude. Like you guys are collecting it.
We have a few petabytes. Yeah.
Right. What are some of the challenges and considerations that you were facing for you to be able to scale the business? Because I think like just the data, just trying to wrap my head around how you guys are managing the data itself is already hard enough. Just let alone having to scale and add more features and make it searchable and make it, all these queries you guys have added to it.
Yeah. So first, we run on bare bones. So we actually don't run in the cloud. And I say that because when you run on bare bones, you can buy really good hardware nowadays. Like hardware is really fast, and hard drives are cheap. And so if you're willing, like we even build our own servers, or we still kind of like build our own servers, like high density. I think they're 2U now, with 2U 4 servers in one of them. And so early on, the cloud was too expensive early on because of bandwidth. And so we were kind of forced to use our own hardware. And over the years, it's turned out to be really nice because scaling has become easier. Obviously, there's a fuck ton of data, and our decision to include historical data has made our life more difficult. Like the easy way to scale is to not store old data.
Yeah.
You can just be like, I only care about recent data. But early on, I made the decision to not do that. I'm not sure it was a conscious decision or not, but it was a decision. And so we only add, we never remove data. And fortunately, compression algorithms have gotten better over the past few years. So LZ4 is really fast, and it's all right. And then we have also Z standard nowadays, which is really good compression with better performance. Then I don't know. I mean, we use Cassandra, and it just scales horizontally. The Elastic cluster doesn't actually store any data, so we don't worry about if it crashes or if something stupid happens with it. And Yeah, don't use Elastic for storing data. I think you're setting yourself up for failure. I would not recommend doing it. I don't know. There's not a lot of magic, I guess. Just buy real hardware that runs nicely, and then just keep buying it every month.
How has IPv6 affected Shodan?
So we've been in the news once for IPv6. There's actually a whole backstory behind that. That is, yeah. So we added IPv6 crawling maybe like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Something like we added a long time ago. And IPv6 is different because you can't just brute force the whole thing. But there's actually been a lot of research into host discovery on IPv6. So IPv6 is not a single algorithm kind of a problem. It's a multi-pronged approach. We have obviously an algorithm for host discovery.
Okay.
Those are pretty well documented in academic research papers, and there's other tools out there that can do something very similar. Then there's IPv6 discovery through DNS. Again, we have our own DNS database that's pretty large nowadays. Third, we also have a lot of community provided IPv6 addresses, right? So you can ask Shodan to scan IPv6. And so any data that's collected as part of that automatically gets registered. And we keep track of that moving forward. I think right now we have a few billion IPv6 addresses that we keep track of. Obviously, a lot of them are defunct. They're not active anymore. But we do have a pretty sizable IPv6 database. And then we have a bunch of other, like, I don't know, random techniques, I guess, that just suck in as many IPv6 related things as possible. It's I don't know if you're ever going to be able to completely solve IPv6.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's something you can do. We also have the advantage that we have a lot of customers using Shodan to monitor their IPv6. So they're actually telling us what to monitor because they'd rather know beforehand than get surprised. Right. And again, that's where our trust relationship has come into play, where they kind of trust us that we're not going to do something too stupid. And so it's like, hey, here are IPv6 addresses. Please make sure they don't expose anything unusual. And we do that. And we have a lot of other partners that send us data as well. But yeah, I think that's an area that we can definitely still grow and do better. I don't see IPv4 going away anytime soon either.
Probably not, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening. There's too much legacy stuff. And but that's obviously something that's we're gonna have to work on more. IPv6.
Yeah. When it sorry, Nick, one more because it's one of the questions that's coming in the chat is I think this is I know the answer, but I want to make sure we give them the right answer. Is you're not just scanning select ports, right? You're going 65,000 ports across the internet every time you guys.
No, we're not scanning all 65,000 ports.
You're not.
No.
How did you make a decision on what you guys scan, what ports you scan?
So first, it was based on the Nmap.
The top 1,000.
The top 1,000 services that are most common on the internet. Then we also have obviously we did random scanning once to figure out the distribution of ports and see which ones are more active and not, things like that. Then there's also based on simply fingerprinting IoT products and fingerprinting devices and seeing what ports are actually being used. Then community submissions. So before DEF CON Black Hat, we get a lot of people talking to Shodan saying, hey, well, it doesn't happen as much anymore, but it used to. Like, hey, can you add this port because of yada, yada, yada. So the trick, one of the challenges for scanning ports is that you want to make sure that you are asking a good question to the service that you're talking to.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you may not get any data back, or you're just going to get garbage back. The other aspect is that if you scan, across the internet, you're going to find a lot of open ports that are not real. These are firewalls are pretending to be open, CDNs that listen on all ports. You're going to get a lot of noise on these random ports, and it can make things more difficult to find a signal if you look for everything. And so we have 1,500, maybe 2,000 ports that we look at.
That's still a large
And we
number of
also
ports.
crawl like references to other ports. So for example, the DHT, the distributed hash table that's
Yeah.
used by BitTorrent, like cryptocurrencies and things like that. So when we crawl a DHT node, we ask it, what are your peers? And then, it says, this other peer is running on this weird port. We follow that, but we launch scans based on the references. And so we do that for a bunch of other protocols. And that's very often when why you see random ports on Shodan, like, well, how did you find BitTorrent on port, 28,015 or something? You're like, that's because it's probably referenced from somewhere else. And we do that for a lot of other protocols. And we have other lists and things like that to try to discover weird, unusual ports. But no, we don't scan all 65,000.
Yeah, I was going to say the reason why I assumed you scan a lot of these ports is exactly what you just said. These random ports that pop in once in a while, and you go, how did you find this thing? So it makes sense that you were following things to find more data and collect more data, which is very clever. It just gave me the assumption of like, yes, they're scanning everything because you find some random stuff, right?
It's very rare for us to get a request nowadays about, hey, can you add this port? It's very rare. I don't think we even got one this year, maybe one, because we do cover, I would say, a lot of stuff.
You mentioned some of the organizations you partner with in a previous comment, and I think that's one of the things I'm interested in is hearing, how do you determine who you work with, like when it comes to other security organizations or, approaching companies for integrations? How has that worked? Because I'm sure you get a ton of inbound from different security products.
We work with all of them. We don't have a, you need to be this big to enter kind of thing.
That's an awesome approach.
No, we have a lot of documentation nowadays. It's not super difficult, but we don't have any barrier to entry for integrating with Shodan or working with us. If an individual researcher contacts us, he's doing some cool research, and he's like, hey, can you scan internet for me? Yeah, we'll do that. We don't have any restrictions in that kind of area. If it's cool research that we can help with, then we'll do it.
So this was almost all of the questions that we have. I think there's a few more, but there's one in the chat that I really want to hear about. And this is, Shodan is notoriously known for bug bounty hunters and hackers to be used in cases of a new ODA getting dropped. So in the case of the Apache patch reversal, the Confluence RCEs, struts, you name it. I go to Shodan, I just fingerprint whatever it is. I look for the fingerprints on Shodan. 9 out of 10 times it's either fingerprint already or it's in the headers, just to the HTTP headers, and I pull it, right? Has there been abuse cases of people being pissed off because their vulnerable Apache, whatever, is indexed on Shodan and it was found somehow by a malicious actor?
Oh, malicious actor. Oh.
No, I don't have to be a malicious actor, but even the company being like,
no, companies get pissed off. Yeah, companies get pissed off. Again, shooting the messenger thing. We just tell them fix it. It's not just fix it. It's not difficult. They're always, the first reaction from some of these companies that they go into damage control mode instantly, in a way where they're trying to shut down all communication about it. Which they're emotional. It's a reaction. I understand. It's not a very good reaction, but now we get it. What surprises me is that security companies do it as well.
Of course they do.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Like we have security companies that are our customers, and then they just assume that because they're our customers, they're like, oh well, we don't want you to talk about our product. I'm like, that's not how this works. Like just it's even more embarrassing. We've had companies approach us saying like, hey, can you just hide us from your search results? And we're like, no. You fix it. Like, if you get into that kind of game,
how it works.
That can be the ultra premium tier of
they're like, can we just pay you to not be listed anymore? And we're like, no.
Wow.
Like just fix it. And we've had companies talk to us like, hey, can we notify us if somebody searches for our shit? And we're like, no, we don't analyze our user data. We don't analyze like user behavior. We don't even log it. We don't do any of that stuff. Like I know some other security companies, they use the user data to kind of enhance their product. We don't do that. I think that's unethical to do that. So we don't do that.
That's amazing.
Because otherwise, the risk is like if you search for something that's private to your company, like let's say I have a super secret domain name, like super secret at Shodan.io, and I want to see, is it exposed somewhere on the internet? You couldn't use Shodan to search for that if we use that data.
Yeah.
Right. So we very clearly separate like what your activity of like looking at things in Shodan from how we do our data collection. Those are entirely separate.
Yeah.
Because we really don't want our user to feel like they need to worry about, oh, if I enter something on Shodan, will it start getting indexed? I'm like, no, we don't.
It's a privacy thing too. Yeah. It's a
yeah,
privacy
exactly.
thing, yeah.
But I am very disappointed actually in how many security companies don't, do the right thing. But
and speaking of the data and analyzing data, it's not really about the data itself, but is there usually an uptick in users that use Shodan when there's a new audit that comes out? Do you see like a huge uptick of
Oh yeah, every single time. It's like clockwork. Like we know. Like it's
I would love to see those logs, John. I want to see the logs of Struts. I want to see the logs of Apache. I want to see those logs.
We don't even like. So I know this because we used to use Google Analytics to see traffic, but we actually got rid of all of that with our new website.
Wow.
We don't do any like third party, none of that anymore. So it's we just see it, I guess, based on raw traffic numbers, not directly.
Right.
Search queries and stuff like that. But yeah, every single time it's one way for us to see if something happened in the world. It's like, oh shit, why is our firewall seeing so much more traffic? It's like, oh, okay, all right.
I would love to see a chart of an ODE being dropped, the time of the ODE getting dropped, and the traffic with Shodan as how it increases. Like, when
it's
the initial POC,
it's a spike. It's not a gradual thing. It's
just
like
through the roof.
People jump on these things fast nowadays. I don't know whether like bug bounty people are just like on top of it sometimes. Where if something new comes out, it feels like a gold rush, where everybody wants to just get in as fast as possible. And so we see that, and then it drops off pretty hard again afterwards. Everybody goes on there, gets a list of all the IPs that are impacted, and then goes on with their life.
Yeah. So it's awesome how much you keep the users in mind. What you've been describing. What do you see, and where would you like Shodan to be in the next 5 years?
I mean,
I know
this feels very corporate, which is really not kind of our MO. It's just getting better at what we're doing. I love that Shodan is sort of this niche company that we focus on doing one thing, doing it well, like the Unix philosophy. I'm not Elon Musk. I don't need to take over the world. It's just I'm really content doing something that I love and being happy. I don't want to discount that factor. So it's just doing more of the same. Like we're gonna improve IPv6 on-demand scanning. We released some new products that are just basically improving some use cases. But nothing major. Just keep on adding. There's new stuff coming out all the time. There's always new stuff coming out. New IoT, new ICS. So I don't see that space slowing down anytime soon.
Well, John, this was incredible. This is I'm so glad we got the chance to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge with us, for being here. This was a very cool interview. I can't thank you enough for being here. Anything else you would like to add before we say goodbye to you and wrap up the show?
No, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here again. I am very happy we got to do this, and I can't wait to see where Shodan goes in the next few years.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, John.
Bye. All right. I think it's clear to say you can see the fanboy in me right now going like insane. I keep catching myself smiling over this entire interview. We went a little bit over time. Nick, what's the deal for next week? What are we doing next week?
All right, next week we will be having another Mentorship Monday, same time, with Niru and Adam Langley speaking with us about CTFs and bug bounties. So be sure to join us then.
Chat, should we do a giveaway? Producer in the back, can you let us know if we can do one giveaway really quickly? Our producer's in the background saying we can do a giveaway. Yes, can you? All right. Should we do a giveaway, chat? I don't see a lot of people saying yes. I know Ari is saying yes because he wants swag, but Ari, you know that's not how it works, man. All right, lots of yeses. All right, so I'm going to put a keyword up, and I think this one's going to be very obvious. The keyword is Shodan. If you want to win, just type in ! Shodan, and you get to enter in our giveaway. So I'm going to put it in the chat like that. All you have to do is type that in. We'll pick someone since we had a request to do this. There we go. All right. This was very exciting, man. This was, I think a lot of, like, the biggest thing for me is, like, when I talk to tool creators is to ask them, like, did you ever expect it to generate, thousands of dollars? I've personally gotten one of my really most favorite bounties because of Shodan. So just being able to ask, like, hey, did you ever think you would generate this much money for bug bounty hunters when you first launched this company is incredible.
It's really awesome just to see like how much Shodan has been able to cover, and the fact that like it started and then ICS and IoT became such a big part of it, and being you can only be a part of so many emerging fields, but it looks like John's had an impact on a lot, between bioinformatics and helping bring so much to light on the internet.
Yeah, I wish we had more time to ask more. I had so many more questions on the scanning side of things, the data collection, on the Volt stuff. I wanted to do more and more and more, but unfortunately, we only have a limited amount of time. All right, so here's the deal. We're going to pick producer in my ear. Can you let me know if I can do 3 winners, please? Can you confirm? Sorry, I got to talk to our producer in the background. 3 is okay. All right. I'm going to roll it 3 times. If you win, all you have to do is look at your whispers on Twitch. So I'm going to send you a whisper, and you are going to be the winner. All right, first winner is Nekaori. I don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry if I butchered it, but you were the first winner. Let me take a copy of this so I know, so I can message you afterwards. And if you win, please let me know in the chat. Just say yes, I'm here, so we know you're here. All right, next one goes to Siavash. I think you've won a bunch of these before, dude. Thank you for being here again. We'll send you a link just in a little bit. I know how to get a hold of you, but let me just make a copy of this so I know you won. All right, last one, Chai. You ready? And our last winner for the giveaway goes to Kaolin. I'm going to say Kaolin. There's an H in there. I may have not said that right.
Calvin?
All right. That's it. You are the 3 winners. That's it for today. This was very, very cool. This is very awesome. Thank you all for being here again. And we will see you all next week.
Thanks all for joining.
See you guys.